The sky so far, but I can't lose it.
Sim racers from around the globe, honoring a revolutionary era of open-wheel racing. With a beast not easily tamed, roaring around legendary circuits at breakneck speed. When engineers and drivers push boundaries, sometimes too far. When heroes muscled roaring beast wheel to wheel around the hallowed ground. A time when the only driver aids were his 2 feet. Perfect combination of man, machine, and speed. Experience the competition and the glory of the early 80s IndyCar action. The Lionheart Retro Series, presented by Sim Experience, starts now.
For the final time in 2021, the Lionheart Racing Series is ready to rumble. 2 champions have already been crowned, with history being made in both the Lionheart Speedway and IndyCar Series. And today, more history will be made as the Lionheart Retro Series writes its final chapter in 2021. 3 drivers are left standing, and while Matt Taylor has the points advantage, it is Aaron Morgan that is coming off back-to-back victories with the intention of stealing the championship from his teammate. It's time for a high-speed, adrenaline-filled double-point showdown in the Action City. This is Auto Club, and this is the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club. Hello and welcome back to RaceSpotTV for one final time for coverage of the 2021 Lionheart Retro Series. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to be joined in the RaceSpotTV commentary booth by the man behind the Lionheart Racing Series and their setups, Andrew Kinsella. You can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to RaceSpot.tv/timing to follow along thanks to our partners at ATVO. Let's dive straight into our HyperX pre-race show because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows that we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15 for 15% off all orders. Andrew, this has been an incredible season, and this car just always puts on a show. The Lotus 79, very much designed to go racing around road courses around the world, but we've seen across of the finest road courses and some of the most interesting ovals that the globe has to offer. Some incredible racing, but it all comes down to this one final race, 250 miles on the board here in Auto Club.
Arjuna, Auto Club has been the finale for Lionheart for a long time, and we've already had two scintillating races here in the other sister series to the Retro Series, but I think that in this car, on this track, this is going to be the spiciest of all the finales. We're seeing four-wide racing in practice here tonight before the race even starts, and we have three drivers who are primed to win this championship, but only one will walk away with that crown. It is going to be a fascinating race here today.
It's a journey that started all the way at the start of March on the Sunshine State. We've now gone to the other side of the United States for today's season finale. Let's talk then about how things are looking with just 125 laps to go this season. Crazy when you think about that. Matt Taylor stole the championship lead about 6 races ago and has not looked back since then, but he's got a slender advantage over his teammate Aaron Morgan. Mike Razmas, last time he led the championship was back at Sonoma when he won the race in wine country, but he is now very much the outside man looking in. We'll have to try and hope that for Matt Taylor, for Aaron Morgan, there are troubles lying ahead. Also a very close battle between David Sirois, Michael O'Brien, and Chris Fowler for 4th. Chris Reagan, Richie Hearn, George Anzaldo, Alex Guyon complete the top 10 in these driver standings presented by the Sim Experience AccuForce Pro V2. Plenty of intrigue, of course, not just about the championship, but about the rest of the top 10, where plenty of prizes will be up for grabs. And leads quite nicely into our rookie standings presented by Butt Kicker Andrew. And, well, when you're a rookie leading the overall championship, you're leading the rookie championship as well. And Matt Taylor has already locked this one in. It's been a great performance from him, but he's not necessarily a rookie in Lionheart competition. We've seen him across of all 3 of the Lionheart sanctioned competitions.
Absolutely, Arjuna. He's probably the busiest rookie in history here. Almost 59 races now once he completes this final one here tonight this season for Matt Taylor. He has been incredibly busy, and he's done incredibly well in these Lotus 79 cars. But that battle for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, that's still very, very close. As you mentioned, Chris Fowler, David Sirois, and Michael O'Brien, they're close for 4th, 5th, and 6th in the overall championship, and they're very, very close for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the rookie standings. So there's a lot of pride on the line here for a lot of these drivers here tonight.
And it should be noted as well that we only have about 22 cars in the race as things stand. There's plenty of time before we get into qualifying with 5 minutes to go till that marker for things to change around. But it means the minimum points that one driver would score is 44. And when you include the drop weeks, not all of the 18 rounds count towards the championships. For both the rookie and the drivers' championships, things are very much still up in the air. We'll try and keep you abreast of all the latest updates in that point situations with our wonderful live timing and points graphics brought to us by ATVO. Here's a look then at your team standings presented by, well, HyperX and domination for Avatar Auto Racing, and that's because all 3 of their drivers, Andrew, sit in the top 5 in the points. Incredible the run that we've seen. We've seen them being 1, 2, and 3 in points in various different races as well. Matt Taylor and Aaron Morgan, the teammates though, now are going to be fighting for the championship amongst themselves. It was close between Lavoie Motorsports, RaceSpotTV Racing, and Graphics LC a couple of rounds ago. Not so close anymore, but Lavoie Motorsports very much needs a good finish to the season to secure second in the championship, and we know that's a team that came into this championship known for road course pedigree. They've become very quick on the ovals as well.
Absolutely. It's been an absolutely dominant season from Avatar Autosports, if I'm going to be honest here, Arjuna. They've done everything that they've needed to do, wrapped up the championship in the team standings well before this final round here. But Lavoie Motorsports, as you mentioned, they've been really up and coming on these oval tracks, especially the likes of David Sirois. He's really started to come into his own in this series as the season is worn on. But don't forget the likes of AeroX and Graphics LC Motorsports. AeroX, of course, well-established team within the open wheel community here on iRacing, and then Graphics LC Motorsports, obviously with Tyler Graff as sort of the head of that team, and some of the drivers they have in this series here have been a mainstay in the Lionheart competition for several years now. So we have experience versus rookies, and we have some very contrasting styles and approaches to the season that as it's gone on, but it's produced some really good racing over the course of the season.
And cannot wait to see how things will shake up when the final chapter is written into the history books in about 2 hours' time. Let's talk then a little bit about your series details presented by Minus 273, the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of a breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. And don't forget to use the promo code minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off all orders. The 5th year of the Lionheart Retro Series in the 7th year of the Lionheart Racing Series. Lotus 79, our car of choice, a car that's undergone a whole number of changes over the course of this calendar year, Andrew. And as the man behind the setups, how has that been for you, trying to adjust these cars to go racing in a discipline where they weren't necessarily designed to be?
I'm not going to lie, Arjun, it's been a little bit of a challenge, especially for these bigger tracks. The new tire that they've put on the car, it works really well on the road courses and pretty good on the shorter ovals, but on some of these bigger tracks, it's hard to find that sort of fine line that this tire needs to work properly over the course of a long run, and you tend to see either very big packs and a large amount of draft, or very, very strung out where you can't follow hardly at all. So it's been a little bit of a struggle to find a good balance here. I think we've got a package here that's going to force the drivers to really drive the car. They're going to be lifting, especially through turns 1 and 2, but it is going to be a fairly pack-driven race here today, at least until we get some pit stops, maybe some green flag pit stops going on. So it'll be interesting to see how the drivers react to the multi-groove racing that's going to be produced here today with this car and this track combination.
And drivers racing over 18 rounds for just under $7,000 in cash and prizes. The Triple Crown comprised of Pocono, Indianapolis, in which we saw an absolutely crazy race all the way to the finish line, almost 4 wide, bump drafting across the yard of bricks. Mark Cohn had won both Pocono and Indianapolis, but he's not, unfortunately, in the grid tonight, so he's not going to be able to make history as the first driver in Lionheart history to have won all Triple Crowns in a calendar year. We'll see what things hold for Cohn in 2022. It's a return to the Action City for the 3rd time in December for a double points championship showdown. Interestingly, the driver that has led the most laps in each of the previous 4 races has never actually entered HyperX victory lane, and the same can be said for pole position. So qualifying, definitely not the be-all and end-all. Being comfortable with a race setup, much more important, and knowing how to time your passes, likely going to be crucial. 12 months ago, we saw the 2nd closest finish in Retro Series history, 4 thousandths of a second. But incredible to think that the average margin of victory is just under 3 hundredths of a second, 0.026. Get your cameras out. We are due for a photo finish to close out the season. Most lead changes 35, again 12 months ago, and defending race winner, the Candyman Dustin Wardlow, will not be here to defend that crown. Let's talk then about this facility, Andrew. We mentioned this over the month of December because we've been here so frequently for these season finales, but this layout of Auto Club, not going to be long in the tooth, as it were. It's going to be going under a major reconstruction to become a short track, but it's high speeds, high banks, plenty of seams on the track as well, which the drivers have already been reporting are going to cause a little bit of chaos here today.
Yeah, this track, as you can see, it's almost an exact copy of the Michigan Speedway, and Penske built this track in the late 90s specifically to recreate that Michigan environment. But what he did when he made this track was he made it slightly less banked than Michigan, so you go through the corners and you have just a little bit less grip. And then, as you mentioned, as this track has aged and the pavement has sort of gone away a little bit, those seams have really come into play. So the car starts to skate as it's going through the corners, and then it hits one of those seams and it can really take off. So it does make for some very tense moments here, especially when you have a car like this where you can easily get 4 wide.
Well, the night lights are well and truly in effect. The sun has continued to set here as for the final time this season. Qualifying is underway. 5 minutes on the clock, 2 laps for drivers to go fast around the 2-mile facility here in Fontana, California. Lap times beginning to come in. Chris Lanini provisional pole position, a 38.366. Still waiting for many of the championship hopefuls to put in some good lap times. Aaron Morgan has gone pretty slow on his first lap time. He's down in 12th as it runs with a 39.287. Here comes the number 48 car through turns 3 and 4 for the final time in qualifying in 2021. We mentioned that grid position might not be crucial, but starting at the back puts you in a difficult position to make things happen. To the line for Morgan, it's a 38.379. It's not pole position. Should be good enough for a top 3 as it runs, but we still wait for Matt Taylor, for Mike Rasmussen to come across and set good lap times. In fact, no, I'm wrong. Mike Rasmussen has only put it up in 6th, so he's not been enjoying qualifying as of late, and that kind of continues here.
Yeah, not the qualifying that Mike Rasmussen would have wanted here, especially with Aaron Morgan in P3 right now. Of course, the big name that we're looking for right now is Matt Taylor. What can he do here to really put his stamp on this final race and put his stamp on the championship? Obviously, he is the one that everyone will be paying attention to. He's going through turns 1 and 2 right now, and he's looking really good, keeping a nice tight line coming up onto the back straightaway here. Really, really good, close to that white line, almost on the apron there. Has to be very careful as he enters this corner, though, not to scrub speed. It's so easy to lose time as you scrub speed, putting a little bit too much steering into it, but he's looking good so far. Now, he'll duck down really early onto this apron here, try to avoid a big bump just after pit in. Clips the grass just a little bit there, right along the edge of the grass, and he puts in a lap time of
a 38.401.
38.401. So he is in 6th place, right in front of Mike Rasmussen, and crucially behind Aaron Morgan. So that is big news. Aaron Morgan up in P3, Matt Taylor and Mike Rasmussen back in the pack just a little bit, Arjuna.
And well, depending on how you look at it, crucially, the 2 bonus points that you get for qualifying on the pole position not going the way of any of the 3 championship hopefuls. Instead, it's Chris Lanini, whose lap time is still yet to be usurped. Michael O'Brien is going to be next to put in a lap time. He's only 14th. It's Ricky Harden, not Harden the wall this time around. He's up into 3rd with 38.374. George Enzaldo is rolling around on track, getting himself up to speed. And what I noticed from all of the major runners is that they were pretty conservative, and lap 1 was all about making sure they didn't burn through the tires. For the final time this season, though, we are ready to take a look at our starting grid for the double point championship showdown for the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club. And so for Graphics LC Motorsports, Chris Lanini puts it on the pole position. He'll have Mark Cohn jumping for joy with that lap time. Chris Fowler on the outside of the front row, 3,000 separates first from second, while Ricky Harden, Aaron Morgan, row number 2. Morgan has really good qualifying position to work to the front, and work for a championship. David Sirot, Paul Jenkins make up the top 6 positions, with Matt Taylor and Mike Razmas 1st and 3rd in the championship, 7th and 8th on the grid. David Rodriguez has pulled off some miraculous wins over the course of 2021 since joining the Lionheart Retro Series, most recently at a track very similar to this, the Michigan International Speedway. He'll be alongside the Old Red of Danny Roberts, Trevor Malone and Alex Guyon through the top 12. Craig Forsyth and Michael O'Brien, 1/10 separating the top 14 cars, with DJ Clark in 15th, Robert Mike 16th, Isaac Snyder the final car to set a qualifying lap time in the pink and blue number 13. Nick DeGroot in 18th, the first car with no lap time on the board. You'll be joined by a whole bunch of cars for company: George Anzaldo, Covey Moore, Mike Rigney, Christopher Reagan, Richie Hearn, the 23 cars in our grid. Plenty of cars not setting any qualifying lap times for the final time this season. Well, there is palpable tension here. It is a championship tension as well. 125 laps left to go. We will crown our 3rd and final champion in the Lionheart Racing Series in 2021. The Lotus 79s know how to put on a show. Cannot wait to get started for this final showdown. And as always, we have cameras across of our grid, but 4 featured onboards that we'll walk you through very quickly. With the HyperX onboards, it's Aaron Morgan and Mike Razmas. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. With the butt kicker on board, Mike Rigney lines up. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com. While Matt Taylor, the championship leader, has the Espo designed onboard camera, get yourself a racing identity. Well, what are you expecting here, Andrew? It's 125 laps racing, 45 to 47 the fuel window. You and I were talking before. We're hoping for some green flag pit stops.
Yeah, if we can get to green flag pit stops, I think that'll throw a really cool strategy feature into this race, just in terms of the draft. But I think especially for this first stint, you're going to see a lot of 3 and even 4 wide action here. These cars are looking really strong, and it's really going to be a fascinating race here today, Arjuna.
Well, green flag in the hand of the Barney. I was trying to remember his name, but we are ready for the championship showdown. It's the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club, and we are racing in the Action City. It's 3 wide for the lead. Here comes Chris Fowler building his momentum up on the outside line. Mike Razmas behind is diving down to the inside through the back straightaway, 3 abreast, almost 2 rows deep if you look back in the pack. A good clean start, Andrew, but it's still the pole sitter that leads the way out of turn number 4.
Excellent start for all these drivers, and right now we got a little bit of a breakaway going on. 4-car breakaway with Aaron Morgan falling in behind the leading 3 cars of Lanini, Fowler, and Hardin. They are going 3 wide into turn 1. Fowler and Lanini really close together, and then Fowler comes back up the track just a little bit, giving a little bit more room. It's really nerve-wracking, especially if you're Aaron Morgan right behind him, to see those cars going that close together this early on in the race.
Matt Taylor stuck in 8th position, has lost a bit of ground here on the start, but he knows it's about making sure he gets to the end, about making sure that he puts himself in position to win the championship. He is in control of his own destiny. Meanwhile, his teammate and championship rival out front is already coming under fire from Mike Razmas, and it's kind of what we've seen from Matt Taylor across of the 3 Lionheart competitions, Andrew, is that at the start of the race, maybe he's just getting into the groove, getting comfortable with what the track has to offer, and then as it rubbers in, as the pace starts to build on up, that's when we see Taylor moving his way to the front.
Absolutely. I think that he's learned a few lessons from some of those races that we saw earlier in the month, particularly from that Speedway race where he maybe got just a little bit too aggressive too early and scrubbed the wall, and it basically put paid to any hopes he had of challenging Alexis Newsom for that championship. But right now, Matt Taylor's just running a really nice race here, really just settling into that bottom groove, trying to stay clean, and so far so good on that front for Matt Taylor.
They're 3 wide for the lead. Ricky Hardin rips the outside line, trying to get past on Chris Fowler. Might open the door for Aaron Morgan to slide his way up into a podium position, because They're losing some momentum. Lanini bobbles up to the high line trying to defend, but allows Chris Fowler to take over the race lead. Morgan to the inside, trying to now get himself up to the point of the field. Oh, this is terrifying at times, Andrew, because I just remember what we saw at Michigan, which was some equally close racing that ended in tears for some of our championship hopefuls.
I think crucially what we're seeing here, Arjun, is these drivers are doing a really good job of maintaining their lanes. So we're seeing some side-by-side action, but at the same time, they're not really putting each other in too bad a compromising position just yet. I'm sure that as the laps start to go on, it's going to start getting more aggressive, but at least for now, these drivers seem to be well behaved, even though we are seeing 3 wide every lap so far.
That's Craig Forsyth trying to go down the middle. Now up into third as Ricky Harding gets a good run, has to check himself up to avoid running into the back of the 53 machine. Mike Rasmuss right on the tail of Aaron Morgan. I would have thought, Andrew, that the low line is not where you want to be. You and I were saying before this race got underway that you would be lifting through the corner here, and when you're pinched down on the inside, it does mean that you're somewhat trapped in limits the amount of options that you've got. So I'm a bit surprised that the championship hopefuls are all staying down on that inside right now.
One thing to keep in mind, though, Arjuna, is that when you spin out on a track like this with such high banking and such high speed, those cars are going to be moving up the track towards that outside wall. So I think that really what they're looking for is not necessarily trying to make as much time right now, because we're all in a pack anyways. I think what all of the championship contenders are thinking is, if there is an incident, I don't want to be caught up in it. So being on the inside probably gives them the best shot at not being caught up in that incident, should it happen.
A big shout out to Dougie Beard, who's really got some great camera angles that you can just feel the sensation of speed. These cars in excess of 300 kilometers an hour, basically the entire lap until they get to the mid part of the corner. Craig Forsyth had the lead for just a brief moment, almost 4 wide for second position as across the line Chris Fowler leads them. 7 laps are in the books, but if you would just tuned in, Andrew, you would not be totally out of place for thinking that this was the last 7 laps of the race.
They're going hard and fast, but as I said, it's been so respectful so far. They've been doing a good job of just keeping in their lanes, not letting themselves get too out of shape across these seams and across the bumps on the backstretch. So really good driving from all of these drivers here so far, Arjuna.
And so right-hand side of the screen, let's give you the live point situation between the top 3 as they run. That is how it stands. If Aaron Morgan can hold his position third on track right now, and if Matt Taylor cannot get 2 positions up from 12th where he's at, in fact he's cycling down through the field as well, not the easiest of runs so far from Matt Taylor, who I think is just biding his time getting to those closing stages of the race. The championship is swinging in the favor of the number 48 car, who has not led the championship at all. It doesn't matter though, you don't have to lead the championship at all unless it's at the very end when you walk out of the season with the trophy in your hand. Oh, still very tense, and if you're watching on and got a little bit of a Christian Horner foot tap, I do not blame you, because 23 cars separated by 2.2 seconds. And when we talk about green flag pit stops, I'm going to knock on the wood and hope I'm not putting the commentator's curse down here, Andrew, but it's going to be interesting to see who can get onto the pit lane, into their box, and roll themselves back onto track with the least danger and also being the quickest, because they don't necessarily go hand in hand with one another.
Pitting off of a track like this in a car like this is probably one of the most stressful things that you can do as a virtual driver, Arjuna. It is so difficult after you've been going 200 miles an hour on the track to slow yourself down and to get the car slowed down well and into that pit lane safely. It's so easy to lock up a tire and to throw away a race through a spin. It's so easy to speed because these cars don't have any electronic aids. They don't have a pit limiter, so it's all done by hand. These drivers are going to have to be inch perfect, and there's a lot of time to be gained by having a perfect pit stop versus an imperfect one as well.
Well, there's a couple of drivers that don't want to have to wait around for that pit cycle to try and make some positions come their way. Craig Forsyth already up double digits into second spot as he's side by side for the race lead. Also up double digits is Robert Mike, so I don't think put in a great qualifying lap time by his own means. A couple of cars being quite conservative. David Rodriguez, who we saw really making the fuel mileage work for him at Michigan. He's down in 16th, -7 from where he started. And of course, the big championship hopeful that not totally surprised to see him being cautious, but it's always interesting to see how championship leaders respond to the pressure. Matt Taylor is down in 12th position, outside of the top 10 as things run. 12 laps now are complete. Craig Forsyth had a nose in front for just a moment's time as through turn 1 the cars come again. There's one car that's all the way up to the wall. It's almost a NASCAR line there, Andrew.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you can get around this track, and one of the important things in any car, but especially a car like this, is to get some clean air on the nose through the corner. One thing we haven't really talked about too much so far is the weather here today, and we've got a strong crosswind that's helping the cars out a lot through turn 4 especially. 23 kilometers an hour, 14 miles an hour. It's basically blowing from turn 4 directly across through turn 2, so it's forcing the cars up the track as they get into turn 2 and keeping them on the bottom of the track through turn 4. So it's making it a little bit more difficult for some of these drivers to maybe make a move, and having that outside lane that you saw some of those drivers doing, as you said, almost a NASCAR line. That's one way to combat that, and getting some clean air on all of your aero bits on this car.
And as a driver, Andrew, these are the sorts of races which send your heart rate skyrocketing. Yes, there's not the physical wariness about what might happen if you get into a big accident like we've seen on many occasions here in 2021 in this Lionheart Retro Series. But you know, you're racing wheel to wheel with people across the globe, millimeters away, on occasion from disaster. Trevor Malone chops the nose off on Robert Mikes. Those are the kind of moments that you start to get scared about.
It is such an intense experience, Arjuna. You have that same mentality as if you're going in bumper to bumper 75 mile an hour traffic, but multiply that times 10 because you're suddenly going 200 miles an hour and you're not quite sure exactly where some of the drivers around you are. You can't see really out the side. The mirrors don't necessarily do the best job of saying exactly where the cars are, so you really have to have a picture in your mind of your surroundings and of what all the other cars around you are doing at all times. And it is so stressful, but it's also, when you get it right, one of the most rewarding experiences as well.
Absolutely. And, well, I think people sometimes don't give virtual racing the credit it really deserves on occasion for the fact that it can be so stressful, racing this close to one another with the realities of the speed of light. There's only so much that you can do to avoid those around you at the end of the day. So I very much appreciate why, maybe people coming to this for the first time don't necessarily understand what's going on, but if you didn't know, well, now you know just how stressful it can be, as Craig Forsyth still trying to work the outside line, build his momentum up. We're getting to the halfway point in the fuel window. Andrew, what's that going to do when it comes to the balance of the car?
Yeah, as you know, that means that this car is getting just a little bit lighter in the rear. It can get a little bit more twitchy, a little bit more darty, but you also get a little bit more heat in those tires. And these tires, as we know, they really hold on for a long time, and they don't actually come into their own until well into a stint, and even into multiple stints in some cases. So as a driver, you're going to be adapting slightly every lap, just figuring out exactly what the tires are doing, and it's going to affect exactly where you need to put the car on the track. You're noticing as this race has started to go on here, Arjuna, the drivers are starting to go 2 wide rather than 3 wide, and I think that's just a product of the second line is becoming a little bit more powerful, and that third line starting to drop off just a little bit in terms of the capability of keeping that car up there in that third lane. So those first and second lanes are really coming into their own now, and we've seen Chris Fowler in particular. He's really stuck to that bottom lane, and it's starting to pay off for him.
You say that, but someone like Trevor Malone has really pushed his way up through the field, now starting to slide very slightly because of his commitment to that outside line. But we'll see how things cycle out. Remember as well, pole has never converted to victory, neither has the car that has led the most laps. So if you're Chris Fowler, might not be feeling too comfortable if you're Chris Lanini, who's already been shuffled back out of the top 10 after putting it on pole position. Plenty of things to think about. Left-hand side, by the way, on the timing tower, your championship hopefuls are highlighted in red, so you can track the position of Aaron Morgan, Mike Rasmussen, and Matt Taylor through the course of the next 100-odd laps. And a reminder of how things are cycled out right now. Aaron Morgan, 8 points clear of Matt Taylor as things run. Plenty of time still to go. These drivers need to make sure they keep themselves out of the danger zone. Phrase that we hear all too often across of so many different series across of the world. It is starting to calm down very slightly, but when you say something like that, you almost know as a commentator, Andrew, things are going to get more frenetic.
Yeah, it's the calm before the storm here, Arjuna. We're really getting into that time where people are going to start getting a little bit more interested in going forward. Let's put it that way. Particularly, I look towards a little bit further back in the pack, the likes of Matt Taylor, David Sirois, George Anzaldo. Those guys are going to start to get a little bit more anxious and look to get towards the front, because it is a big advantage to be near the front of the pack when it comes to the pit stops, especially because the car is so good on the bottom lane. That bottom lane is basically where drivers have to start slowing down in the middle of 3 and 4 as they come down to pit lane. So the drivers like Matt Taylor, who've been religiously sticking to that bottom lane, they're going to have to start to either try to find a way to move forward and in order to not lose time that way, or they're going to have to find a way to move off that bottom lane and really be very careful through this pit stop cycle.
And one thing I did want to kind of ask you, Andrew, is not necessarily focus on today's race, but kind of what we've seen the last couple of races. Silverstone, Long Beach, and Road America, 3 road courses that all led up to this final race of the 2021 Lionheart Retro Series. One of the things that the drivers were talking about with this new updated tire model that we've got on the iRacing service is the fact that it's almost like racing on an oval on a road course at times, because of the way the draft has started to affect the way that the battles shake up.
Yeah, and to be clear, the draft model is a separate thing from the tire model. However, one thing that I have heard from a number of people is that through the course of this COVID pandemic and maybe some drivers coming in from the real world, iRacing has had feedback from a number of different locations, including real world drivers, and they've really done a good job of reshaping their aero model and their draft model to sort of fit what a more realistic draft would look like. So that's one of the things that I think we're seeing from not only this type of oval racing that we're seeing right now, but as you mentioned, on those road courses, because you talk to a real world driver and you know that they're getting affected by that aerodynamics 1, 2.5, sometimes even 3 seconds back in an Indy car. So I think that iRacing itself is taking a huge step forward in terms of having a much more realistic draft model now.
It's the nature of iRacing, 4 distinct seasons, 4 unique updates that come across a calendar year, all bring their own little spices and surprises. Most recently, of course, we had updates to Watkins Glen, for example, a track that I have no doubt we'll be visiting next year in both the Retro Series and the IndyCar Series. We got, of course, the wonderful new, you've got to give it its proper title, the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team vehicle, the Mercedes W12 World Constructors winning car that's just finished up its 2021 season in the real world. It's brought a lot of intrigue to iRacing from so many different walks of life as David Rodriguez bobbles down the track, and whoa, that's an unsafe rejoin if I've ever seen one.
That was a spicy moment. That's the only word that I can use to describe that, Arjuna. David Rodriguez came back right in the middle there, and I'm not sure who that was behind him, but did a fantastic job of avoiding a potential issue there. It looks like it may have even been a hardware problem on his end, because he came off the track and then he was going down the apron there, and it just sort of shot back up the track. But I think that was Michael O'Brien right behind him that did a fantastic job avoiding disaster there. And Yeah, it took Rodriguez almost half a lap to get back into the gas and really start going again. So I'm wondering if he had some sort of pedal failure that prevented him from. That's quite possible. Yes.
It seemed like he was still up to speed, at least initially. Seems like either maybe he's in the VR and, his headset died, something that our own teammate Brian Carey is all too familiar with. It could have also been just a monitor that's gone black. I've seen that even at the top levels of sim racing. But what it does mean, David Rodriguez, 12 seconds off the pack all by himself. He needs a caution to come and help him out if he wants to close off 2021 with a victory here in the Lionheart Retro Series. Believe it was Alex Gouillon, the Lavoie Motorsport 08 car, that managed to recognize that Rodriguez was coming back up the track and slid his way to the right-hand side. Michael O'Brien had to get hard onto the anchors to slow himself down in time as well. All sorts of chaos, but very well handled. And you know what this reminds me of, Andrew? Is the race that we saw at Indianapolis, the Indy 250, where we went green for almost 95% of the race. We had one caution, about a third, or even a third of three quarters, I should say, of the distance into the race. But the first 60% of the race, exceptionally clean, almost reminiscent of what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I almost think, Arjuna, that's a function of just having so much on the line for so many of these drivers. Obviously, Indy is the one place that any IndyCar driver really, really wants to win and do well at. So they make sure that they're on their best behavior and they don't do anything to take themselves out of it. This championship finale as well has so much on the line for so many drivers here. So I do think that even though this is a virtual race and a virtual simulation, it really does feel real for so many of these drivers, and it produces real pressures and real emotions. And I think that's what you're seeing here today, is just that real desire to come out on top is keeping them from doing anything too dangerous and putting themselves in danger so far in this race.
Well, speaking of staying out of danger, we're on board with the championship leader, Matt Taylor, who is all the way back in 13th position, has dropped outside of the top 10 as we ride on board with the Espo Design onboard camera. Just to the left-hand side of driver's eye view, you can see what the train of cars looks like in front of Matt Taylor, and this is where he's in control of his own destiny. Repeating the words that I said earlier, Andrew, it would be very easy for Matt Taylor to get caught up in the emotions of this race, to make sure, to fight his way to the front, try and hold on to the position there. But he knows that's not what he needs. We've seen plenty of big crashes over the course of 2021. He does not want to be involved in one of those. He needs to make sure he's at the front of the field when there are 123 laps down and we go for a shootout to the checkered flag.
I think discipline is the right word for Matt Taylor's drive so far today. He's been right on that bottom lane and just sort of let the race happen. Once he got to that bottom lane, it looks like he feels really comfortable there, and he just sort of gives that air of letting this race sort of come to him just a little bit. And we've seen, again, as you mentioned, he's made some mistakes just by being maybe a little bit too aggressive, maybe not disciplined enough. This has been a very disciplined race so far, so I've been very impressed so far with what Matt Taylor's doing. Even though he is sort of back in the pack right now, as we see, he's not even a second back of the leader. He's well within this fight as the laps sort of wind down here.
About 12, 11 laps away from the pit window opening. We'll wait and see who's onto the pit lane first, but surely it would be Chris Fowler, who continues to lead the way. Has led the majority of the laps so far, as Isaac Snyder in the pink and blue popping himself up the track almost into the fourth or fifth groove. Just building that momentum up by himself. Under 60 minutes if we go green from here till the end to close out the 2021 season. Craig Forsyth has popped himself to the low line, now is slotted in front of Aaron Morgan. Been a great drive from Craig Forsyth, another driver that's really now calming down very slightly as, I say that, he almost drifts up into the path of Robert Mikes. They're too wide, about 4 rows deep right now. You're right, Andrew, you said this about 5 laps ago. They're not going 3 wide anymore. In your opinion, is that because of the tires, or is that drivers just knowing the race is coming to them and they've still got a long way to go?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do think that the tires have probably more to do with that, though. I think at this point in time, there's enough grip on the bottom two lanes that they're able to stay in the gas for longer through the corners, and it's making that third, fourth, and fifth lane sort of less viable because you only have an advantage with those higher lanes when you can actually stay in the throttle and the lanes below you can't. Obviously, the bottom two lanes, they're the shortest way around. So as long as you're able to stay in the throttle, you should be able to stay in those bottom two lanes. And I think that's what we're seeing for the most part right here. But I do think that a lot of what we're seeing is as well is just some smart driving, because I have a feeling that even though it's a two-lane race now, by the time we get to 10 to go, it won't be a two-lane race anymore.
No, definitely not. And I think, I don't know if we've even mentioned it so far, Andrew, but these are bias ply tires, which were designed to go an entire race distance. So we're not going to be seeing them come into the pits and get a fresh set of boots. Instead, it's about making sure that even if you don't wear them out so much as compared to other cars, just driving within the limits of the tires so you still have plenty to play with in those final laps of this race.
Absolutely, but we should mention as well, though, that it's not just it's not just the tires that matter in this race. The fuel is the important part. So there is still some strategy to be played with these pit stops, especially as we get towards that final stint where having a little bit of a lighter car for longer, that's going to be the thing that pays off for a lot of these drivers. So setting yourself up and doing something like what Mike Rasmus and Aaron Morgan are doing, which is just sort of sitting in line, and they're probably saving a fair amount of fuel, taking that short way around, lifting a fair bit in these corners, using the draft to stay with the rest of this pack. That's going to be saving them a lot of fuel, and it could potentially pay off as we come towards that final pit stop.
It's a good look on board at just how chaotic and how close these drivers are at speed. It is, we mentioned it before, it is intense, and these drivers have to make sure their mental focus is right where it needs to be. David Rodriguez, by the way, has retired from the race after his technical issues, so 23 down to 22 to close out 2021. Been a good start to this race so far, 39 laps. We are on the 39th lap right now without any cautions intervening. And all but one car has survived, and that one car was not taken out by any sort of shenanigans out on track. Instead, David Rodriguez had his own hardware failing on him, something we've seen plenty of times across of RaceSpotTV. We've even seen drivers like Max Verstappen have his own hardware failure in endurance races here. As look at the angry fan of cars, the pack of cars working their way through on lap 40, only a couple of laps away. And how do you start positioning yourself, Andrew, now for coming down on the pit lane? We've seen miscommunication in the last couple of months in Lionheart competition. You want to make sure you're down low, and the advantage of being here in iRacing is that you can also send messages to your competitors and say, I'm coming down this time around.
Yeah, communication is going to be so important for these drivers. We have a rule in Lionheart that says basically if there's a car behind you, then you should be signaling with either a text message or a voice message in-game that says that you're coming down this lap. That being said, it can still create a lot of chaos. And one of the things that I think especially the championship contenders really need to be considering is moving up into that second lane sooner rather than later and finding sort of a nice gap to have up in that second lane, because we've mentioned this before, you're going to be finding that most of the drivers are going to be pitting from that first lane, and it can be so easy for just one driver to make a small mistake, not realize that the driver in front is pitting, and that's all it takes to cause chaos in this field.
Been a good climb up the field for series organizer George Anzaldo, who is now running up in what is 7th position, plus 12 from where he started. And he is our sim experience driver profile for today. 84 starts, 19 top 10s, 3 pole positions. Does illustrate that he's got the pace when it comes to the one-lap shootouts. We've seen him in control of a couple of races in 2021, just not had the luck to be able to convert that to victory so far this year. But Andrew, as someone who works behind the scenes on things that are Lionheart related, you know just how committed George is to keeping this series in tip-top shape and pushing forward year after year.
Absolutely. I mentioned this during the Speedway broadcast. I don't think that there's a league admin in iRacing that's quite as committed to George Anzaldo, or to his league as George Anzaldo is. He is so driven and so focused on moving this league forward and growing it and getting it better and better every year. And he does that just basically through sheer will and determination and hard work. He is basically every day of every week doing something to help this league move forward, whether it's finding sponsors, whether it's helping out with race control, post-race stuff, whether it's racing in these races and doing very well for himself in that as well. He pushes this league forward and is the true driving force behind this league, and it's a pleasure to work with him on the admin team, and it's an inspiration to see what he does behind the scenes.
He's almost 3 abreast right now. Isaac Snyder on his outside. Ricky Harden looking to try and force his way down the inside. And Zaldo's going to sweep to the inside of Aaron Morgan, who is starting to be shuffled back in the pack very slightly. As here comes our first taker onto pit road. It's Chris Fowler, who has to dive down onto the lane. We expected him to be the first to pit, given that he had been leading for so long in this race. But Andrew, given that we want drivers to want to be on as lower fuel as possible for vast majorities of this race, pitting first is not ideal.
Definitely not ideal, and the bigger thing for Chris Fowler is he didn't have many people coming with him, certainly not the people around him, so he's not going to have really anyone to draft with to help him get back going quickly again as well. So that's going to be a big issue for Chris Fowler, but I do think that because he was in the leader, he stands a good chance of rejoining, at least within the lead pack. So it shouldn't be too bad for him overall.
Couple more cars onto the lane this time around. Chris Lanini, the pole sitter, along with DJ Clark in the 4 cars. So there we go. Couple more cars. Chris Fowler rejoining on the access road. Almost lit up the track and I think spooked Aaron Morgan very slightly, who had his own moment as he got a little bit loose up the track. Went the number 48 car, bobbles him back now into 3rd position. It's getting racy on track, but this is what we expect, because these are the crucial times. If we go green from here to the end, this may be the cycle that determines how things shake up. Going to be a busy entry this time around. A whole heap of cars coming on down, about 10 or so, as Isaac Snyder almost locks up himself as he comes down into pit lane. It's Forsyth, Mikes, and Zaldo, Jenkins, Snyder. Too many cars to list off now.
Yeah, nearly half the field down this lap, Arjuna, and it was actually a really good entry for these cars. No chaos, which is a little bit surprising, to be quite honest, because it is, again, so easy to make a mistake getting on a pit road here. That transition is not an easy thing to do, and these drivers handled it really well.
Who's going to win the race off a pit road? You can see, by the way, bottom right portion of the screen where the rest of the cars are coming around the track. They're not pitting this time around, so here comes the rest of the cars. Forsyth from Mikes, from Anzaldo with side by side with Jenkins, almost 3 wide at the exit of pit lane as the cars roll themselves out back onto track. Always terrifying. The tires will have cooled very slightly. They need to make sure there's no bobbles this time around. So 8 cars still yet to pit. Surely we'll see them, if not this time around, the next lap down, Andrew.
Yes, and crucially, all 3 of the championship contenders are amongst those 8 cars that have not pitted yet. I do think that we'll see a few of them coming down pit road this time by. It looks like Aaron Morgan and Mike Rasmus both down on pit road this time by.
Only looks as though Danny Roberts, Michael O'Brien have stayed out to extend the stint beyond 48 laps. So as we start lap 49, almost 50 laps into this 125 lap championship showdown, crucial pit entry for Aaron Morgan, for Mike Rasmus, and for Matt Taylor, who's been patient and biding his time. You cannot afford to slide through your box and put yourself in a difficult position to fight back with almost a third of the race in the books. So here we go. No tires being taken as suspected. Rasmus is going to be alongside with Aaron Morgan, but is also going to be alongside with Ricky Harden. That's not ideal. Looks like Matt Taylor has come out in front of Alex Guyon. Where's the rest of the pack, though? They're already up to speed. There comes Chris Fowler, followed in close pursuit by Craig Forsyth. And as you'd suspect, Andrew, the gaps have begun to open up during green flag pit stops.
But crucially, Aaron Morgan and Mike Rasmus both in the draft of those 2 leading cars right now. Ricky Harden trying to go with them, and I don't know whether it looks like it. Who is that? That is Isaac Snyder, I believe. will cycle out to be 5th position. I don't know whether they're going to be able to go with him. So right now, there could very well be a breakaway of 4 or 5 cars here as we start this next cycle in these pit stops, or after these pit stops.
But there's no gap which is larger than give or take about 1 second, Andrew. So do you think that these cars could get packed up once more, or has the gap been opened up sufficiently for the front 3 or 4 to start building up that gap and trying to break away?
So the problem right now is that Ricky Harden is really much closer to the leading 4 than the cars behind him are to him. So there's a very good chance that Ricky Harden is going to be able to break the draft to David Sirois, Michael O'Brien, and Bobby Mikas. And that's where that break is going to happen. And then again, after that, looking at I believe it's Michael O'Brien, there's another gap to Bobby Mikas, although that's not as big as the rest. But I think that there is enough that Harden is going to be able to get that draft, get up to these leading 4, and he has, I think, at this point, broken the draft to David Sirois.
Well, we'll have to wait and see as 50 laps are officially in the books. The top 5 or so are separated by about 3/10, and then it is about 1.7 now back to David Sirois, so they're well and truly separation between the packs here, and well, 2 of the championship hopefuls are up in that leading pack, and your championship leader is buried down in the midfield. Has cycled up to at least 10th position, but when you say at least 10th position, definitely not how he'd want things to be. But as it runs, still a long way to go, Andrew. The championship is coming down to 3 points between Taylor and Morgan.
Matt Taylor is in the danger zone, not just in the championship, but on the track as well. He's in a position where he is in a pack of cars right now that is going 3 and 4 wide. So this is probably exactly what Matt Taylor didn't want to see. Is that leading pack just sort of flowing away, and he's in sort of the hornet's nest right now. Hopefully these drivers, and Matt Taylor has to be hoping that these drivers around him can sort this thing out, and maybe they can find a way to use the draft to get back up to the leading 5 cars. But exactly what Matt Taylor did not want to see from that pit stop cycle, Arjuna.
Absolutely not. There is a bit of a barnstorming battle behind even Matt Taylor, where Isaac Snyder leads the battle for 12th positions, as he's got about 5 cars for company at this point in time. But of course, very much just bragging rights on the line for the majority of those cars. Matt Taylor has been stuck up on the outside for the last couple of laps as he tries to find an opportunity to slide his way back down to the inside, where he was running comfortable in the first 50 laps or so of this race. Now 3 abreast. That's not where he wants to be on the outside line. We've already talked about it. When you have an incident, drivers' cars tend to slide up the track rather than anything else. So being on the inside gives you that little bit extra protection from any incidents that will unfold. Matt Taylor, at least for now, is side by side with George Anzaldo. 5 cars breaking away up front. Aaron Morgan tucked up on the inside, currently sitting 3rd spot, with main championship rival Mike Razmas now right behind him in this queue of cars. A long way still to go, and one more opportunity for there to be separation, Andrew, that builds in a potential green flag pit stop.
Yeah, and I think crucially in this pack we have Aaron Morgan and Mike Rasmus, who have really gone farther than Chris Fowler, who is leading, and Craig Forsyth as well. So if there is going to be that separation in that last stint, I think it's definitely going to fall in the favor of Mike Rasmus and Aaron Morgan, who can potentially have that shorter pit stop on this next time by.
Yeah, because the expected pit stop before the race was give or take about 35 laps to go. So that would be about 12 laps shorter than the windows that we've seen so far. And if anything, you'd expect it to be potentially even shorter than what we've seen. So that's the great thing about racing. The answers are handed out on the track itself as we ride on board from the left side of the cockpit with Mike Razmas, who came into this race 3rd in points. Still has a potential opportunity to try and sneak the title away, but currently it does look as though it's between the 2 teammates, between Aaron Morgan, between Matt Taylor, and you can track the 3 championship hopefuls on the left-hand side of your screen, highlighted in red. Morgan and Razmas running up in the top 5. Matt Taylor has at least cycled his way into the leading cars in that peloton, the chasing group of cars, but he's still stuck up on the outside line, 3 abreast, not where he will want to be. So now, Andrew, if you're in that second pack of cars, what can you do to try and close on these leading 5 out front?
Well, the first thing is to not do what they're doing right now, which is going 3 wide almost every corner. Really what they've got to do is they've got to find a way to, first of all, get sort of in line and allow the fastest drivers to pull them around. So what they've got to do is they've got to figure out which of these drivers can really wheel the car through the corners the best and not scrub any speed. It's going to take not 5, not 10, not 15 laps, but a full fuel stint basically for these drivers to really get back into the fight here, because it's about taking tenths and hundredths of a second off per lap in order to get back into the fight. But as they're doing it right now, Bobby Mikas, he's being pinned to the bottom of the track by George Anzaldo, and he's not really able to think about optimizing his lines, to think about optimizing how he's going through the corners. So they're actually probably giving away maybe 3 or 4 hundredths a lap, and it's just moving them back further and further and further, and it's making the objective harder and harder and harder. So they've really got to find a way to make that work.
Sorry, Andrew. Were they just 4 wide? Yes, they were, coming across the start-finish line. Now, this is for a 12th on back, where the pole position man, Chris Lanini, has really been hung out to dry, now down in 12th position. 4 wide, this is what Matt Taylor wants to see. He wants to see the danger happening behind him, with the potential of the safety car coming out and grouping everyone up once again.
Absolutely. This is the third pack where everyone's even more desperate, because they see that where in the first stint they were within a second of the leader, now suddenly they're 4.5, 5, even 5.5 seconds behind the leader here in this pack. So the desperation, especially for some of the drivers like the Elite West drivers, Trevor Malone, who we saw really far up front for most of that first stint, some of that desperation is going to be creeping in here for them. And if there is an incident, this is exactly where Matt Taylor needs it to be, as you said, behind him.
Looks like it's Isaac Snyder who's being running alongside with Chris Lanini, at least for now. Paul Jenkins will try and slide down the inside of the pink and blue. One other thing to just note is you're not allowed to dive below the white line in Lionheart competition unless it's on the last lap of the race, Andrew. And that's something we saw come into play in the Lionheart IndyCar Series when they went racing at the Michigan International Speedway, where Adam Blocker waited until the final lap of the race to dive to the inside and win the second Triple Crown of the season. Given the history of the Retro Series here at the Action City, at Fontana, at the Auto Club Speedway, don't be surprised if we see something similar.
It would not surprise me in the slightest to see probably, I'm guessing, not only a car on the apron, but at least 1, if not 2 cars up above that driver on the apron, trying to get every inch they can. Because one of the things about going to the apron is it shortens up the distance, but it can also, if you hit it wrong, actually slow you down a little bit, because it is quite the transition here at Auto Club. It's definitely not as smooth as you get at a place like Michigan. So it'll be really interesting to see once we get to that final lap how these drivers treat it. But it is, again, only on that last lap in that drag race to the checkered flag, coming off of 4 on the last lap. So it'll be very interesting to see how these drivers treat that final lap once we get there. But we've still got a lot of racing to go. We're almost coming up to a halfway point here.
Yeah, we're almost there. But I will say, full credit to the drivers. A couple of the races this season haven't been this clean. I'm still in shock and need to speak to people about the disaster that was Motegi, where, what was it, lap 12 of the race, we basically saw the entirety of the field mixed up in something that took out half the cars. We saw big ones at Michigan as well that race control took a close look at and had, I'm sure, a really difficult time trying to assign responsibility, not assign blame, but assign responsibility, because very similar racing to what we see here, Andrew, where it's not necessarily one driver's fault for instigating an incident. They're not trying to cause a big crash. But when the speeds are this high and the margins are so small, things happen, and ultimately that's what race control has to do, is figure out who was the most responsible for what happened.
Yeah, it's a fine balance between assigning blame and really sort of policing standards and really forcing the drivers to think about what they're doing beforehand. And I think what we've seen here today is that really the drivers who are here today are doing an excellent job of thinking not just about 100 feet down the road, but the next lap, the next stint, and they're really planning out all of their moves. They're not making sudden moves. They're not going in different directions at the same time. They're not crowding each other. They're really doing a good job of just maintaining their lane, letting the race come to them, and realizing that this is a long, long race that they have to get through in order to be even close to winning it.
Matt Taylor has dropped to the tail end of the second grouping of cars. That affects the championship situation pretty significantly, because it's 1 point that separates Morgan from Taylor, and that's partially because Ricky Harden on the outside line has managed to get himself a nose in front. So it is still anyone's game, and if Taylor and Morgan get mixed up in any sort of shenanigans of their own, don't be surprised if there's someone there to pick up the pieces. The 68 car of Mike Grasmas will be very happy to take back the championship lead and the championship away, as it's now a 5-point swing in the favor of Morgan. It's going back and forth all the time though, so it gives you an indication of just how much is on the line here for every position that Morgan and Taylor gain out on track. Morgan is fighting, of course, with Ricky Harding. We're seeing that right now. Matt Taylor has managed to work his way up into 9th position, where he does at least have a teammate for company in Michael O'Brien. But look at the momentum that Taylor was able to build up on the outside line. 3 abreast, back up into 7th position.
Excellent work so far, and look at Matt Taylor coming down, really close stuff, but if he can get down to the bottom lane here behind George Anzaldo, I think that this might be a really good thing for this group of cars to sort of coalesce behind a new leader. Bobby Mikas wasn't exactly leading them back towards that group. Same with David Sirwa. They weren't really leading them back towards the front of this field here. So maybe having that new leader in George Anzaldo, he can start running maybe some slightly different lanes, some slightly faster times, and really getting this group sort of back into the race here.
How's your tension doing, Andrew? I've calmed down very slightly since the start, since it's not just one big pack, but the reality is things could change just like that in the blink of an eye. And Matt Taylor's 3 wide and in the middle right now. Surely he's starting to get stressed.
I'm sure Matt Taylor is really starting to sweat it out here, but he is doing basically as good as he can do right now with the hand that's been dealt to him. He can go 1 position higher by the end of this race, and he's in 6th place. So that will basically force, if I'm not mistaken, Aaron Morgan to win this race if Matt Taylor can finish 6th. So it's definitely, even if they can't get back up to that leading group, all is still not lost for Matt Taylor, because we definitely still have a long way to go in this race. So the tension is rising, but I still think it's under control for Matt.
55 laps to go in the 2021 Lionheart Retro Series. It is the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club, and the championship is down to single digits between 2 drivers, Aaron Morgan and Matt Taylor. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with the final chapter of the Lionheart Retro Series in 2021 right after this. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and ESTV for round 18 coverage of the 2021 Lionheart Retro Series. It's down to the wire in this 2021 championship, and we are live in the Action City for the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club. Delighted to have your company for one final time this season across of Lionheart competition. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, delighted to be joined by Andrew Kinsella in the RaceSpotTV commentary booth. A reminder that you can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to RaceSpot.tv/uptiming to follow along courtesy of our partners at ATVO. Andrew, it's been an exhilarating start to this race. 75 laps about to be in the books, and incredibly, somewhat unpredictably, against the run of expectations, we've gone green from the drop of the green flag almost 60 odd minutes ago.
The racing has been fast and it has been clean, and it's exactly what we were hoping to see. We may not have been expecting it, but we were hoping for just this type of race, and this is exactly what needed to happen for most of these drivers in this championship fight. It's been a great race so far, and I can't wait to see what these next 50 laps can do towards the finish of this race.
And a reminder as well, not only 12 months ago did we see the second closest finish in Lionheart Retro Series history, 0.04 of a second. The average margin of victory is 1/4 of a tenth of a second, 0.026 seconds. And back in season 1, the largest margin of victory, 0.04 of a second. So get your camera out. We are due for a photo finish to close out this 2021 season. And a reminder as well, 3 championship protagonists. Matt Taylor came into this race, the championship leader. Didn't have the best qualifying, has not really been as aggressive as one might have thought, but again, destiny was in his hands. He is currently running in 7th position. Aaron Morgan came into this race second. He's up there in this leading group of cars, 5 cars that have broken away from the rest of the contenders. He's followed in close pursuit by Mike Razmas, who is 3rd in the championship, had an outside chance looking in, but very much not a likely winner as things run. Aaron Morgan is up there battling for 3rd position alongside Ricky Harden, and as the points stand, because Matt Taylor has managed to work himself to the front of this second grouping of cars that we're watching right now, the peloton in effect, things are starting to look a little bit better for Taylor, but we know just how quickly things can change, Andrew. If he drops out of the top 10, advantage goes back to his teammate, Aaron Morgan.
With double points on the line, anything is possible for these final 50 laps of this race, Arjuna. Matt Taylor, he's doing everything that he possibly can, but losing that draft has been very detrimental to his hopes. He's hanging on by the slimmest of margins we've seen for the first bit of the race. As you mentioned, he hasn't been very aggressive, but these last 3 or 4 laps, he's really started to put the pressure on George Anzaldo, and he's really started to try and drive the pace just a little bit more, see if they can get that second pack back up towards the front, maybe take a little bit more of this championship into his own hands rather than just relying on sitting back. So I think that we're going to see Matt Taylor really starting to turn up the aggression here as these laps start to wind down.
You can see it's about a 6-car train from 6th on back. Anzaldo and Taylor at the front, at least for the time being. They've got David Sirois pinched down to the inside with Michael O'Brien not too far behind. Of course, O'Brien, Matt Taylor teammates, but don't necessarily expect too much assistance, Matt, because of course, Michael O'Brien doesn't want to fall out of favor of Aaron Morgan III of the Avatar Order Racing trio in what has been a dominant year for Avatar Order Racing, already having secured our team championship presented by HyperX. A bit of movement up front as well. Looks as though, at least for the time being, it's now Mike Razmas who is side by side alongside with Ricky Harden, but Harden gets the momentum down the back straightaway as they build that speed up into the entry of turn number 3. Well and truly under the night lights right now, Andrew, and we mentioned this earlier, there is a strong amount of breeze around this track. What's that doing to the cars here today?
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, what it's doing is it's really allowing the car to stay near the bottom of the track through turn 4 especially, and it's really helping the handling through there. But through this section of the track, turn 2 especially, it's forcing the car to go up the track just a little bit. Most of these drivers, especially back in the pack, are lifting just a little bit especially through that apex of turn 2 there. And it's really forcing them to drive this car a lot, even though they're in these sort of packs. They're doing a lot of driving, both with the steering wheel and with their left and right foot.
Good view for our flag man, who's not had too much to do since he dropped the green flag. Hopefully the next thing he has to do is wave the white for that final 2-mile dash to the checkered flag to close out the season. But that is not guaranteed. Very similar to, of course, what we saw earlier this year, the second of the Triple Crown races, the Indy 250, which had a 4-wide finish, bump drafting to the line. It was Mark Cohn that took the checkered flag. Movers and shakers, left-hand side of your screen, you can see Craig Forsyth dueling it out for the race lead, up 11 places from where he started. George Anzaldo plus 13, the biggest mover on the day so far. In terms of big losers, looks like Chris Lanini is going to continue the trend of pole position, missing out on any sort of a victory here today. He's down in 16th, minus 15 to his name so far. Now the question really will be, Andrew, we talked about the fuel for Chris Fowler. The driver that has led the most laps has never won here at Auto Club to close out the season. Given that we expect Fowler to have a slightly longer stop, given that we expect him to be on less fuel, on lower fuel for less time in the race so far, it's not looking good for the 20 car either.
It's not looking good, but it's not looking terrible either. He does have that big gap between that first pack and the second pack. As long as he can do what he did on that first stint and come out with enough of a draft to get into that lead pack, I do think he does still have a decent chance at it, but I do think he is a little bit behind the 8 ball just because he is going to have to take on more fuel on this last stop and really make sure that he saves enough to get to the end, whereas all of these other drivers are really going to be flat out here. So he should be okay on fuel, but it's really that time on pit lane that's going to be killer for him.
This time by the line, it is 40 laps to go in not just this race, but the final race of the season, the race to the checkered flag, as pit road going to be busy right a little bit earlier than scheduled. We've got cars onto pit lane, and the big surprise is Matt Taylor is joined by the Lavoie Motorsports duo of David Sirois and Alex Guyon. We were just talking about wanting to be on lower fuel over the course of the race. Matt Taylor down onto lane already, Andrew.
Yeah, it is definitely a bit of a surprise seeing Matt Taylor do this, but I do think that what he's trying to do here is he's trying to figure out a way to break the draft with that pack and really use the cars around him to get further up. So he probably didn't do an entire fuel load there. So he's going to spend the right amount of time on pit lane that he otherwise would have, but what it's going to allow him to do is, especially with David Sirois going out in front of him, it's going to allow him to have that draft, and he's going to come out right in another pack of cars. So having that draft and getting up to speed quicker is going to be very, very important for Matt Taylor here. So I think it could work out, but it is definitely, I think, a little bit more of a difficult path forward for Matt Taylor from here.
In terms of track position, it's put him right back where he started, basically, because that's Anzaldo battling it out with the number 17 just behind. So for Taylor, he's actually not too close to David Sirois, who really had a great cycle on the lane. Matt Taylor, 9.4 seconds stationary for both Sirois and Guyon. It was in the 8-second bracket, so a full second lost for Taylor in terms of total pit stop time. See how things shake out then, as looks like Michael O'Brien has also come down to pit road. Is anyone else going to come this time around? Doesn't look as though that's the case just yet. It's getting increasingly racy, though. Aaron Morgan trying to get second away from Craig Forsyth.
Yeah, it's starting to get a little bit more spicy up at the front, but they're still going basically in the same formation that we've seen most of this race so far, at least most of the second stint. I will say that one other benefit for Matt Taylor going out there is he is now on the bottom lane of the track, and he will be able to establish himself on that bottom lane. So it could potentially work out for him in that favor as well, because the bottom line seems to be where you want to be in order to hold the cars behind you at bay. As we've seen, Chris Fowler has done a really good job of doing just that. Similarly, George Anzaldo and David Sirois, Bobby Mikas, they really haven't been able to be moved up off the bottom of that track, as we see, who is that? That is Fowler and Forsyth in the pit lane this time by.
As suspected, they were some of the earliest to come down the first cycle of the race, so they blinked nice and early. Leaves Morgan to take over the race lead. Razmas right behind him. Ricky Harden up on the outside line, so 3 cars now in this leading group. And Zaldo was cycled up to 4th, only has Robert Mikas for company. Paul Jenkins, Trevor Malone, Richie Hurd, Chris Reagan, Chris Lanini, Isaac Snyder, DJ Clark. That next grouping of cars is Morgan. Razmas onto the lane, leaves Ricky Harden out there all by himself. And these are the crucial stops. They call it in NASCAR the money stop. It might as well be the championship stop here for the final time this season.
It all comes down to this for Aaron Morgan and Mike Rasmus. If they can get a good pit stop here, this could be their ticket to winning the race and potentially winning the championship, especially if you're Aaron Morgan. It's so important to hit the marks. It looks like he's done that perfectly well here. If he can have a nice pit stop time here, he should be able to get back out in front. If he can get back out in front of Chris Fowler and Mike Rasmus, this could be it for Aaron Morgan.
7.9 stationary compares to 9.6 for Chris Fowler, 9.7 for Craig Forsyth. Morgan and Razmas sure to leapfrog themselves past the duo that was swapping back and forth for the lead. There comes Fowler, there comes Forsyth, but new net race leader, it is Aaron Morgan, and guess who is right on his tail? Mike Razmas, who wastes no time and dives down to the inside. To the point goes Razmas.
Nice move from Mike Rasmus. That's his only shot, is to win this race at this point here, Arjuna. And so he's done exactly what he needs to do. He's actually probably hoping that Chris Fowler might be able to find a way to get himself into this fight and get himself in between himself and Aaron Morgan. But we can't forget that 5th car in that leading pack was Ricky Harden. And look who's coming out right in that pack as well.
He's emerged just behind, but at least a bit of separation between the top 2 and Forsyth and Fowler, at least for the time being. The rest of the cars rolling themselves off of pit lane. Chris Reagan has come in this time around. Nick DeGroot, the only car that is yet to pit from the leading group of cars. Does look as though Covey Moore had some sort of an issue by himself. He's down in 19th. Isaac Snyder's had an issue of his own, maybe under the pit stop cycle, because he's been in pit lane for an awfully long amount of time. Add to the retirements that include DJ Clark, who was just retired from the race, interestingly. Danny Roberts, who must have had something that we missed a bit earlier on, because he's been in the garage for about 40 laps and counting so far. And, of course, David Rodriguez, who had that technical issue very early on.
Yeah, it's been a low attrition event so far today. Again, a couple more on this pit cycle. It does look like Snyder had an issue, and Reagan also had an ultra-long pit stop there. So between the 3 of them, that's going to make it a little bit easier for Matt Taylor. He's going to fall, or he has a little bit smaller of a cushion in order to make sure that this works. But one thing I want to draw your attention to, Arjuna, is look who is in the draft with David Sirwa. That is the 3rd Avatar Autosport teammate of Michael O'Brien. He has found his way up in front of Matt Taylor, and that could be big for the championship.
We'll quickly look at how the points run. I think we picked up what happened there. Morgan has got a 10-point buffer, but Razmas is right there. But Razmas can do nothing more in terms of the points right now. He has led a lap, which gives him 2 bonus points to his name. He's in the lead, literally unable to get any more points to his name as things run. Let's go ahead and see if we can pick up what happened between Chris Reagan, DJ Clark, and it was on pit entry, and it was an almighty incident that included 3 cars, I believe, 4 cars potentially, in fact, because that was a big one. That was humongous. So it looks like Snyder was just going a bit faster on the entry into the lane. And I'm in shock. We had gone so clean from that point forward, and it all ends in tears for 3 cars on pit entry.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that most of that incident did happen on the apron, so by the time the cars had spun around, they were on the apron, and we are staying green here through that incident, but it was definitely an almighty shunt there. It does look like, Snyder just misjudged that entry. Reagan was unstable under braking, and probably Snyder didn't really know where Reagan was about to go, and they came together, and unfortunately, that third car in there, DJ Clark, he just had nowhere to go.
Didn't look like he was coming down either for Clark, so no time to react. And that's what we say, what we've been saying indeed so far, is that the margins are so slim here that one mistake, doesn't even have to be your own mistake, can end in disaster. Looks as though, at least for Snyder and Clark, that is day done. Reagan has managed to roll himself back onto track, but might be down on speed. We will have to wait and see. So 3 cars breaking away at the front. Fowler and Forsyth might have to try and team up with one another to close the 1.5 second deficit they've got to the top 3. David Zero, Michael O'Brien, a little grouping there between themselves. Matt Taylor is duking it out with Alex Guyon. And once again, as it runs, it is Aaron Morgan that currently leads the championship situation. Taylor came into this race the championship leader by almost about 30 full points, but he needs a miracle. He would have been hoping that maybe that was a caution, that incident that we just saw, Andrew. But like you said, because it was down on the track, down on the apron, no caution came out there, and Matt Taylor still has it all to do.
Now, I'm just looking at this, but it looks like Michael O'Brien has dropped back from the back of David Sirwa, so he might be trying to get that pack up towards the back of David Sirwa here. He might be taking one for the team and trying to get Matt Taylor up there. I'm not seeing any damage on O'Brien that would be causing him to drop back, so he's pulling out now, but definitely a strange one from O'Brien. He's now cycling himself all the way to the outside of the track here, so maybe some residual damage from an incident that we didn't see, but I don't see anything on his car. But he definitely dropped back, and that is one position higher for Matt Taylor in this race. That could potentially throw the championship one way or the other here.
He is truly in the danger zone, though, is Matt Taylor right now. You can see David Sirwa all by himself, so in terms of lap time, he will be caught by the cars behind. The question will be, how long will it take? This time around, 25 laps to go, 50 miles left here at the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club. And what a show it has been so far. The championship will come down to the very closing stages, not just of the race, but indeed of the season. One more look at them as it runs. Taylor has managed to swing himself in front, but you can see just how precarious things are. Aaron Morgan needs to make sure he wins this race, because it cycles in his favor when he's in the lead of the race. It cycles back in Taylor's favor when Morgan gets shuffled back. The thing that Morgan cannot afford here is to be shuffled back to third position.
Absolutely. Once Morgan gets to third position, all bets are off at that point. And it looks like the 3 cars in the lead right now, they are fighting tooth and nail between all 3 of them. 3 wide through turn 1 this time. Mike Rasmus went from the very top and in third place, used a whole heap of momentum into turn 1, went down on the inside. So they're swapping at different ends of this track, really using the momentum, and it is tight between the top 3 right now.
They're pulling away from Fowler and Forsyth behind, who are trying to do a bit of swap drafting among the 2 of them to try and close on in, but doesn't look as though, at least for the time being, it is going to work. Matt Taylor still on the outside, by the way, of Alex Guyon. As you can see just how close they're getting. 3 wide just behind Richie Hearn on the inside. He's got Robert Mikas just to his outside. George Anzaldo ripping that outside, now trying to challenge Taylor and Guyon for what is 7th position. Last time around, these cars actually did not close on David Sirwa in front. If anything, Sirwa gained a couple of hundredths that last trip around the racetrack. So, for Matt Taylor, surely it starts to build up the tension.
Oh,
and
boy!
Contact there between Matt Taylor and George Anzaldo. The iRacing gods have smiled down. I think Matt Taylor got away with that one.
Oh, we were inches from disaster there, Arjuna. George Anzaldo, Matt Taylor into turn 3, just a little bit of contact. Anzaldo coming down as Matt Taylor is going up slightly. We mentioned off the top that there's a lot of bumps, especially into turn 3. The bumps get really bad. Yeah, Anzaldo is just coming down there on the entrance into turn 3. It's the normal line, but when you have a car underneath you, like Anzaldo does, really, really tight racing there. Unfortunately, again, the iRacing gods have smiled on us, and we are still green with no major incident there.
That could have been a championship deciding showcase there. A championship defining incident, but Matt Taylor holds on. George Anzaldo did hold on as well, only lost a couple of positions there as we come to 20 laps to go. Looks like Richie Hearn got all the way to the inside of the track, had a bit of a bobble, but Richie Hearn holds on, at least for the time being. Morgan has the race lead once more, bit of separation as well, couple of car lengths.
Sorry, going back to Matt Taylor, what Matt Taylor just did was huge for this championship. He got down in front of Alex Guillon cleanly, so he is now leading on the inside of the pack right now. So that was a very important move. He now has control of this pack. So if he is going to do anything and lead this pack up towards David Sirois and try and keep this championship lead, this is how he needed to do it. So very important move there was him moving down in front of Alex Guillon there.
And the other thing is, we mentioned this earlier, if there's going to be an incident, cars tend to wash up the track. The place that you want to be is down on that inside line, and as the fuel burns off as well, these cars will grip that much more into the track. You'll be able to be more committed on the throttle on the inside. We've seen that as where you want to be. Matt Taylor, at least for now, has put himself into a good position, but he's neck and neck with Robert Mikas on the outside line. Michael O'Brien has actually fallen back slightly. I'm not sure if he's just biding his time, or maybe doesn't want to interfere with the battle for the championship. Speaking of the battle for the championship, up front, Aaron Morgan back to the front of the field. Looks as though the three of these cars just working together, extending the advantage. Now 2.7, the gap between first and fourth position. Forsyth and Fowler have really dropped from the leading three contenders. It will be, if things hold, if we go green to the end of this race, it will be a three-car race for the win. It is still a three-car race for the championship as well.
Yep. Now, I want you to pay close attention here, Arjuna, particularly to the line that Mike Rasmus is taking. He's not even going in the second or third. He's going all the way up to the third lane here, getting a lot of separation, and he's really using the draft and he allows Aaron Morgan to stay on that inside. He uses a big draft, gets a huge run. Aaron Morgan pulls up here, coming into turn 1, and allows Mike Rasmus to keep that momentum and stay on that inside lane there. So that's how you swap draft here at Auto Club, and it's how they've gotten now up to 3 seconds over the duo of Forsyth and Fowler, is working together like that to make that happen. So it's much harder to do something like that when you have a big group like we see this battle for 7th here between Bobby Mikas, Matt Taylor, George Anzaldo, Alex Guillon, and the rest of them. It's much harder to arrange it because you have to have the cooperation between everyone involved to make sure that the people get the runs that they do. But when you do, you can see that you can get even half a tenth to a full tenth a lap just by swap drafting.
And these cars squabbling for 7th on back really haven't closed on David Sirois as one might have expected. It's still about 1.4 second the advantage. What's the delta for the draft here, Andrew? When are these cars really going to feel that hole in the air that Sirois is punching just up the road from them?
Yeah, it won't be until probably about 0.8 to 1 second, sort of that area. These cars, especially with the setup that I've put on them, they don't have a whole lot of downforce. They have basically the minimum wings that you can on the car, and most of the downforce is coming from the under tray of the car. So you're not going to get much effect from the draft right up until about that 1 second mark, and then you should start seeing them really start to pull in.
The reality is, as things stand, no one knows who is going to win this championship. Taylor might get swarmed. Morgan may not win this race. Morgan is now the one that has to ensure he wins. That would make what Taylor is doing basically irrelevant, because as it stands, Morgan would win the championship. But you can see, if he doesn't win, that gap between Morgan and Taylor can come down to as close as 2 points. And as this group of cars continues to build speed and close on Sirwan, that gap now 1.3 seconds out on track. It might swing back in favor of Taylor despite what has been a slightly disappointing final race of the season given his own standards. It's close between Taylor and Micus, and it has been a bit too close on a number of occasions. Hearn forces Anzaldo up the track by himself, so now Anzaldo will shuffle to the back of this final, third group of cars. I was about to say the second group of cars, but it's not even that right now. 13 to go. How do you play this if you're Aaron Morgan?
If you're Aaron Morgan, I think that what you have to do is let Mike Rasmus lead coming into turn, or coming out of turn 2 on the final lap. I think that you need to use the backstretch draft to really get momentum going, find a way to clear him into turn 3, and then get down to the inside as quickly and as hard as you can. If you're Mike Rasmus, you have to find a way to not give up that inside on that final lap, and make sure that you do everything you can to force Aaron Morgan up into that second lane and try and prevent him from taking away any air and forcing you into a lane that you don't want to. Because if you control that inside in that leading group, I think you have the race won.
Gap between Sirwa and the cars behind is now down to just over 1 second. Next trip around the track, I would suspect it will be under a full second. So here comes the draft for Taylor and company. Taylor knows that 6th might be good enough to secure the championship, regardless of what happens at the front of this field. He's still getting so close to Micus on his outside line. He must be just screaming to himself, give me some room, just let me be, I've got a championship to go win.
Well, and you can see that was probably just the beginnings of the draft coming to take effect, because he just couldn't keep it on that bottom lane as easily as he could earlier on in this race. But I think he's definitely got that draft of David Sirwan now, so if he can use this draft and this momentum to get past David Sirwan cleanly and get back down to the bottom, I think that he's got a much better shot at winning this race. But he's still got to hope that Aaron Morgan doesn't win this race, because if Aaron Morgan wins it, I don't think that there's anything that Taylor can do without a caution here.
It comes down to this, 10 laps left in the season, and Taylor has really closed on David Sirwan. There'll be no hope of getting any better than 6th on track. The gap between Chris Fowler and David Sirwan is 3.3 seconds. It comes down to this. Up front, it's Morgan and Rasmus side by side. If you're Ricky Hardin, you must be in a rather difficult situation here, Andrew, because we know just how much Ricky would want to win this race, just his second in the Retro Series. The other win that he's got has come on a very similar track to this at the Michigan International Speedway, but as he sees Rasmus sliding up the track in front of him, he knows these are 2 championship hopefuls he's duking it out with.
Yeah, I think Ricky's playing this really, really well. I think he's just letting Aaron Morgan and Mike Rasmus do all the work. He's seen how quickly that they've been lapping since they've been cooperating. And I think what Ricky's doing is he's just sitting here waiting, and I wouldn't be surprised if the gloves come out on that final lap. As long as he doesn't make contact with either of them, I think that he's going to do everything he can to try and win this race and potentially steal one away from Aaron Morgan or Mike Rasmus.
And crucially here, as the pack is caught up with David Sirwan, Matt Taylor has been forced to go to the outside line. How is he going to play this one now, Andrew? We think that the low line is where you want to be. Matt Taylor has got to clear the Lavoie Motorsports 99 car as soon as he can, so he can control that bottom line and make sure, as we've got 7 laps to go, he's in a good position as George Anzaldo back to his outside.
Yeah, I think that, we have a spinner here. That was Forsyth.
That was Craig Forsyth. Fortunately, at least for Taylor, I should say, for Morgan, no caution has been brought out there. Now the question will be, what happened to the 53 car that induced that incident out of turn 2? Because he was only running with one other car. Was it contact with Chris Fowler? We will take a look And the RaceSpotTV replay as they dive their way into turn 1. What happens here, Andrew?
Looks like we just have Craig Forsyth. He hits the bottom apron of the track in the middle of the corner. The car gets loose and he's just not able to save it. It comes around on him. Fortunately, he keeps it off the outside wall and gets it down before that pack of cars is able to close down on him. Really nice driving from Forsyth. But crucially, Arjuna, that is one more spot for Matt Taylor. If he can get by David Sirwa, he's got a chance, even if Morgan does win this race now.
I think fifth would be good enough for Taylor, no matter if Morgan wins this race, but I'm not 100% clear. The reality is they are so close that I don't think our live standings can keep up with all of this action as it sits. It is 8 points to Aaron Morgan, but Morgan leads the race. Taylor is down in 6th. So, and now it's cycled back. So, Taylor's jumped up to 5th, Morgan's dropped to 2nd, and I'm not good enough, and I don't want to trust my own mathematics with this much pressure on the line to say who would win the championship if things finish as they are.
You have to be on pins and needles right now. 4 laps to go in this race, 4 laps to go in this championship, and no one knows what's going to happen next. Inches is going to decide this championship here, Arjuna. I am on the edge of my seat. I don't know about you.
I've got the Christian Horner foot tap going on, that's for sure. Battle for the race lead. It's Morgan who's now forced up to the outside line. I would suspect, and this is trying to be a little bit more omnipresent than I potentially am, that Morgan is not in the ideal position. Might get boxed out by Ricky Harden as well. This time around, 3 laps to go. I think Morgan led at the line that time, though. I think Morgan might actually be able to power off the corner just that little bit better. We'll see how it's going to shake up, but the reality is these drivers have gone green from the start of this race to lap 123. It comes down to the final 6 miles.
What a race we have seen here tonight, Arjuna. This has been a classic Lionheart Retro Series race. Now we're seeing 3 wide back in the pack with Matt Taylor, almost 4 wide with George Anzaldo on the outside. These guys are going for every inch of this race, coming up to just 2 laps to go. Oh no!
Behind Taylor, one of the Voir Motorsports cars goes around, and that's the race. That's the end of this race. The championship will finish under caution. Was it Razmas or Morgan that was in front when the caution flew? It's Mike Razmas.
Razmas.
Where was Matt Taylor, though, when that caution dropped? What is this going to do to the championship? It looks like 2 points. That's what separates Matt Taylor, Aaron Morgan, and it's looking like your 2021 Lionheart Retro Series champion will be Matt Taylor.
Oh my word. What have we just seen here today, Arjuna? I can't believe the race that we've had here today. Matt Taylor, what a drive that he's put in, if in fact he has one, because I should say that we will need to wait for the official standings to come out and make sure that this is the correct one with all the bonus points factored in. But it looks like Matt Taylor did just enough to win this championship.
Matt Taylor is scored in 6th. Aaron Morgan is scored in 2nd. I think it is going the way of Matt Taylor. There will be no drama like we saw just this past weekend in a certain other open wheel championship. There will be no time for the safety car to have any sort of shenanigans and impact on this championship. What a way to close out 2021. Green until the dying stages of the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club. Mike Razmas will win the final race of the season in what has been a topsy-turvy 2021. But championship honors go the way of Matt Taylor for Avatar Auto Racing, a first-time Lionheart champion. What a way to do it as well. Not an easy day by any imagination, Andrew, but that was a drive worthy of a champion.
Absolutely. Matt Taylor did exactly what he needed to do. He was cautious early, made sure that he stayed out of trouble, and when he needed to, he put his foot down and he went as fast as he could, did exactly enough to win this championship. What a drive. And then how can you fault the driving of Aaron Morgan or Mike Rasmus either. They did everything that they could do. Mike Rasmus just barely edging out Aaron Morgan when the caution flag comes out. That is going to be the difference between Aaron Morgan winning this championship and losing it.
There's more drama because I've just noticed on my timing screen, Matt Taylor is scored with a couple of incidents to his name. Matt Taylor has the incidents, Aaron Morgan has 0, which does mean both. Do we have a tie?
Oh my. We may just have a tie, Arjuna.
We may just have a tie, and I don't even know what the countback is going to be here. But
the countback is wins.
The countback is wins, which I believe would swing in the favor. No, they'd be tied on wins as well. They'd be tied on.
Then be second places after that.
So yeah, there's no chance we're going to be able to say what the countback result is. All I know.
Oh my.
All I know is what a crazy season it's been. The first one we've had the pleasure of covering here on RaceSpotTV, and it really did not disappoint. The 3 championship hopefuls all parked in victory lane, and they deserve it. What a season they've all had. And for any one of them, it could have been a championship if things had swung in their favor. We'll be looking forward to seeing what 2022 holds in store for these 3 drivers, 2 of which compete across of the gamut of a Lionheart competition. But take a breath, get relaxed, because the drama is not done. There is plenty more still to be coming. And we'll wait for final confirmation from Race Control as soon as we can get it. Well, I guess in the meantime, let's go ahead and take a look at our Carnox race results. Don't think there's going to be too much contention over the results itself, but Mike Rasmus takes home what was a dramatic win, his 3rd of the season. It's his first, I should say, on the oval so far. What a crazy way to round out the campaign. Aaron Morgan 2nd, Ricky Harden, what a drive from him to hold on to the podium position, not interfering in the championship battle either. That was crucial, while Chris Fowler, David Sirwa to complete the top 5. Championship leader coming into this race, and the question still is he the championship winner? I think so. I'm not sure. That's the story of Matt Taylor in 6th, while for Alex Guyon, he finishes this race in 7th. Richie Hearn, biggest mover of the day, plus 15, finishes this race in 8th position. Paul Jenkins 9th, with Chris Lanini, the pole position sitter, dropping down to 10th, continuing the trend of pole position, not being able to convert to victory. What a crazy day it was. I'm still trying to just figure out what we've seen in these closing stages. George Anzaldo 11th, with Trevor Malone down in 12th. We saw that teal number 34 mixing it up at the front, but unfortunately for him, got shuffled back in that first cycle of pit stops. Mike Rigney, the 00, down in 13th, with Nick DeGroot 14th. Chris Reagan, after being involved in an incident in pit road, or pit entry to pit road in that second pit stop cycle at least, rounds out the top 15. Late race drama for Michael O'Brien, getting mixed up in an incident. He's down in 16th, with Craig Forsyth, Covey Moore. The other cars are 1 lap down. Robert Mikes 19th, with DJ Clark 20th. That was that incident that we talked about on the entry in towards pit road, with Isaac Snyder, Danny Roberts, and David Rodriguez through the top 23. So, we know Race Control is working hard to get us those results as quickly as they can, but while we wait, let's dive our way into the HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows that we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com, and don't forget to use the promo code Lionheart15, that's LIONHRT15, for 15% off all orders. And I tell you what, Andrew, while we wait, why don't we see if we can pick up what actually happened to bring out that caution that changed the season in the most dramatic of ways. So it was coming in through, I guess this is turn number 4. Mike's makes contact. I believe that's with Richie Hearn. And was that George Anzaldo that got mixed up in it as well?
Yes, unfortunately, George Anzaldo, an innocent bystander there. Absolutely nothing that he could do. What it was Bobby Mikas just out on this third lane here. He's in the third lane. Richie's right behind Matt Taylor. I don't think Richie did anything wrong. I think Micus just comes down just a little bit, gets into the front right corner of Richie Hearn, spins up the track. George Anzaldo, we've talked about it all day. If a spin happens, they're going to go up the track. Anzaldo's in that danger zone. Absolutely nothing Anzaldo can do there. And unfortunately, it was day done for both Micus and Anzaldo there.
Still waiting for final confirmation, but provisionally from what I'm hearing, our points were not that far off. It was 2 points in favor of Matt Taylor. I tell you what, while we wait, we still got plenty of things to go. Our postseason award show coming up as well. Let's see if we can grab your podium very quickly. And in a dramatic race, Mike Razmas took his third win of the season. And Mike, what a championship showdown we had just then. Talk to us about the nerves going wheel to wheel for 123 laps without any incident, and then the relief for the race to finish like that and not having to go to the photo finish to close out the season.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I mean, coming to the end, you're expecting the last lap to be kind of crazy, like what move are you going to do? And I've been nervous since Road America, which was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So yeah, I came into this race just trying to make it to the end, and me and Aaron and some of the other guys, Ricky, we played the strategy pretty well and worked together and just ended up together at the end. And I just got lucky with that caution, and which is crazy because I hear Aaron may have lost the championship by finishing second. I don't know about that yet, but I hear it's super close.
It's either 2 points or a tie. That's how close it was. And really, yeah, really kept us on our toes. And I think I said never trust a commentator's math. I'm glad I didn't commit either way earlier on in this race. Talk to us about the season then, Mike, because 2 victories before this, both came on the road courses. We've seen you be strong on the ovals, though. It's not to say you're not quick there. What changed over the course of the year? Of course, the car changed pretty dramatically as well late in the season. It was a long season, a slog for all of you guys.
Yeah, it sure was. I mean, it took a lot of learning, you know, with the new update and everything, and adjusting to that car. But yeah, ovals, I'm just not aggressive enough. I'm kind of too nice, and I always just want to make it to the end. But I've been working on being a little bit more aggressive, trying not to cause any problems, and starting to pay off. I mean, today the strategy just worked out perfect for us, and that's kind of how I ended up at the front. But you know, some days it works and some days it doesn't. Tonight it worked.
So what's 2022 hold in store for you now? You got a couple of weeks off before the turn of the page into the new year, and then of course the season doesn't start in earnest until March. Are you going to be pulling double, triple duty, or are you going to be focusing on a couple of these Lionheart competitions next year?
I'll be retro full-time again next year because it's just my favorite car. It's my favorite car ever to drive, and I can't let it go, you know. IndyCar I'll do some part-time, but staying with my team and Mark Cohn and Tyler Graff and Graphics and LPM, everybody there, we're just such a great group of friends, and makes it really fun to race in Lionheart with George and everybody.
Well, congratulations on a dramatic win, on a fantastic season as well. The championship may not have gone to you, but we saw just how strong you can be over the course of the year. You're also the winner of a pair of minus 273 gloves for this final race of the season and the victory here today. Congratulations, and looking forward to seeing you in 2022.
Thanks so much.
So that was Mike Razmas, our winner here at the HyperX Championship 250 at Auto Club. And next, we'll dial up Aaron Morgan, who did almost everything that he could, but he was robbed of the chance of fighting all the way to the checkered flag. The caution just came out at the worst possible timing, and unfortunately, Aaron, you missed out on the championship by just 2 points. Talk to us, though, about this final race and the pressure that maybe you felt, given that your teammate Matt Taylor came into this race with a sizable championship lead.
Well, I knew from a long time ago I needed him to have some bad luck at a few races, and I knew this was going to be one of them too. And so I just decided, with all the problems I've had on these pack races this year, I'm just going to find the safest spot in the whole pack, and I'm going to sit there. And that's what I did. I sat just right behind the leader on the bottom lane, and E-Rex are going to blow up the track, and I did everything I could. Yeah, it's unfortunate that you know, caution came out, but actually if you look at the points now, they're tied, which is insane. But he's gonna win on countback.
Yes.
So I can't. That has to be the closest. I think Saunders and Adam and Blocker had a 1 point year. Now we had a tie.
Talk to us about this car as well, Aaron, because it wasn't designed necessarily to go oval racing, but it knows how to put on a show no matter where we take it. We've seen great races across the globe as well. How does this compare to the IndyCar, for example, where you also compete here in Lionheart?
It's really different. There's different techniques you have to use to get pace out of it, and I personally like the IndyCar a little bit more, but this one it has those little things that it's weird. I don't like it so much on the ovals, especially after this new update. It's gotten really packy. It's really hard to really do anything. It's not pack racing with it now, but it just has those little quirks that are different. It's fun.
What's next year hold for you then, Aaron, after you get a couple of weeks off to relax, not have any Lionheart competition? We're going to see you doing double duty again across of Retro and IndyCar?
Not for a full season in Retro. Next year in Retro, I'm going to try running road only and a couple of select ovals that I like New Hampshire if we're running there, or Gateway. And I'll just do full-time on the IndyCar. It just didn't quite have the free time with my family I wanted this year, so we're going to fix that, and hopefully I'll defend the road championship next year. I won't be able to go for the full championship.
Well, congratulations on a fantastic season, Aaron. Enjoy the holidays with your family. Can't wait to see what you've got in store for us in 2022.
Thank you so much.
So that was Aaron Morgan, and it does appear as though it is now being confirmed that it was a tie for the championship, but Countback does go the way of Matt Taylor. Not on wins, not on seconds, but instead on top fives. Now we're joined by the driver who was in the popcorn seat, had a great view of the action out front, Ricky Harden. Ricky, first I've got to ask you, before we talk about your season and this incredible performance, how nervous were you being around the likes of Mike and Aaron, knowing that they were fighting for a championship, and knowing you still wanted to win the race as well?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely made me more nervous than I usually would be, but I mean, it's still a race. I'm still going to try to win the race, and I'm going to be a little more careful around them. That's for sure. But man, I wish we could have raced that out. I definitely would have gone for the win, and I think I had the right position to get the win.
Been a bit of an up and down year for you across of Lionheart competition. I think that's fair to say. I remember most distinctly your run at Indianapolis in the IndyCar series for qualifying, where we were almost half joking about how you didn't want to end up in the wall, and then, well, you ended up hard in the wall. What's it been like for you, though? You don't just compete here in Lionheart, but in so many different things as well. You're pretty busy across of the iRacing service.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a rough year. I was disappointed, honestly. I came into the season really looking for a championship run in Retro, and it just didn't go according to plan. We had a couple of avoidable contact penalties early in the season, and then had a 3-race suspension and 35 points taken away, and that was rough, but I made mistakes, and that happens. So we'll come back next year into Retro and do better. I'm happy to have IndyCar behind me. I just can't drive that IndyCar well, and I don't want to go back to it right now, but it was a lot of fun tonight. We had a great race.
So I was going to lead me into my next question, which was what's in store for you next year?
Yeah, definitely for Lionheart. We're going to be back for Retro. This car, the Lotus 79, is just so much fun, particularly on the ovals, and the way that the setups are in Lionheart is just a lot of fun. I don't really have more fun anywhere else.
Well, congratulations on the season. Congratulations on this fantastic race. Can't wait to see you in 2022. And, well, hopefully it's a little bit better luck than what you've had so far this year.
Yes, sir, and I'm going to do my part to make my own luck better, so be a little bit more careful, make better decisions, but we'll be back. And congratulations to Aaron and Matt Taylor and Mike Rasmus, all those guys. What a fantastic season, and they're all fantastic to drive around. I love those guys. I have a lot of fun racing with them, And thank you. I want to give a shout out to simracingmerch.com, which is James Krahula. Thank you for his support this year. And big shout out to Midwest Simulation Spotlights. At a track like this, those spotlights are the best thing that you can invest in.
Oh, I am sure, given how close it was. And that's our podium interviews in the books. We're going to get to the postseason awards in just a second, but Andrew Kinsella, I mean, we've had our breath. We're still waiting for the dust to settle because it sounds as though the countback, it is a tie. That is confirmed. The question is the countback, and it sounds like it might swing in favor of Aaron Morgan, apparently.
Yeah, so what happened, Arjuna, is that the doubling of the bonus points didn't happen when they first calculated. So when the bonus points were doubled, it was, in fact, a tie between Aaron Morgan. And the last thing that I have heard is that Aaron Morgan has the most second-place finishes, which, according to the rule book, would mean that he has won the 2021 Lionheart Retro Series Championship. But we are still waiting on official confirmation. But so far, that is what it seems to be at this point.
Race Control is endeavoring to get that to us as soon as they can, so we will get to the postseason awards as soon as possible. But at least for now, let's just reflect on the season. Let's reflect on what a way to finish things off that was, Andrew. I mean, 18 races. Started at Homestead. We had some struggles at times. I think of some of the chaos, for example, we had at Phillip Island. Motegi, definitely probably the lowest point of the season, given how crazy it was. But Michigan was great, very similar to what we saw today. We went green until the very dying stages of this race. And for the championship to be decided on countback, it shows just how consistently strong Matt Taylor and Aaron Morgan were, and for the teammates to have pushed themselves that close and that hard over the course of the year, testament to them, given how crazy the schedule has been for both of them.
The cream has absolutely risen to the top of this. It is definitely the case where the racing this year, sure, it's had downs, but it's had far more ups than downs over the course of this year. And I look at the other Triple Crown races as well, Arjuna. You look at Pocono, you look at what happened at Indianapolis as well. Absolutely incredible racing, just like we saw here today. What a way to end the championship. And I do believe that we have Georgia and Zaldo with us to give us the final word on the championship exactly who has won here.
We're going to give him the time to get it sorted. We're not going to put him under pressure like that. Let them finish behind the scenes. We'll get to him as soon as possible. Still absolutely crazy, and like we said, Race Control really working hard behind the scenes to get everything dialed in. We'll get to the postseason award show as soon as we can. We're not ready to necessarily get there. We'll get there in just a couple of moments' time. Wow. We'll get to that now, I think, because we are ready to confirm our 2021 champion. It came down to countback. It came down to a tie after 18 incredible races, and Aaron Morgan is confirmed as the 2021 season champion, and George Anzaldo is here to award our champion with his crown.
Wow, first off, thank you everyone for hanging in there. That was certainly a nail-biter. What a way to end 5 years here of the Retro Series competition. This is historic for sure. We've had championships come down to a point, but to tie and then to come down to this fashion, it really does show the perseverance and the grit and the skill that it took to make every point count, every position count, and that certainly, I think, is a testament to the quality of drivers here in the Lionheart Retro Series. So on behalf of the Lionheart Racing Series and the title sponsor, Sim Experience, would like to present Aaron Morgan as the 2021 season champion for the Lionheart Retro Series. Congratulations. What a victory.
Thank you. Oh my God. It's so huge because I thought I didn't have it. And I knew it was insane with the count, the tie, but I misread the rules. I thought it would be top fives, not seconds. And then, I mean, you get the winning second in this race. I'm like emotional right now. Oh my God.
Well, fantastic job there, Aaron. And because of your great season, you're going to be awarded with a AccuForce Pro V2 direct drive system from Sim Experience, as well as a host of other prizes from league sponsors. So again, congratulations on a well-deserved championship. It came down, yeah, you can't ask for, I guess, a better ending to a season. You earned it, and congratulations once again.
Thank you, George. Thank you for putting on the whole league. You know, iRacing isn't my hobby. Lionheart is my hobby. I only race here. I don't race anywhere else, and I work so hard for it. I appreciate it so much, man.
Quite welcome. Congrats.
And it's not just the overall championship that goes in favor of Aaron Morgan. He also wins your road championship presented by Sim Experience. George Ansaldo is ready to present that award.
Well, again, you know, I've said it many times. The road to the championship is through great road racing. It's been proven time and time again, especially if you see the dominance by Adam Blocker in the IndyCar Series. Those road victories have certainly paid dividends for him, and it appears that it's done so again. So on behalf of Sim Experience, once again, I'd like to crown Aaron Morgan as our 2021 road champion. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just speechless still. Thank you.
I think it is very understandable that, given how crazy the last 5 minutes have been, let alone the past 8 months or so on this road to the championship, that it has been an emotional evening so far for Morgan, and the champagne, the celebrations will surely just begin. While he may not be our champion in 2021, Matt Taylor is our Oval champion presented by HyperX, and George Ansaldo is here to present that award.
So for our 2021 Oval champion presented by HyperX, we're so very happy to congratulate Matt Taylor on a fantastic season. You've proven not only your ability on the ovals and also the roads, but here we're here to recognize your oval talents, and you've done a fantastic job this season, and we're very proud to award you the Oval Championship this year. Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you, George. I appreciate that. It was a good season. I guess being on the wrong side of ties was kind of a theme throughout most of the season, and then to have it go this way, that one's gonna hurt for a while.
So that is Matt Taylor, your Oval champion presented by HyperX in 2021. And now here to present your Driver of the Year award for the Retro Series is former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year, Mark Cohn.
Driver of the Year. This award is unique in that it is not given solely based on speed, but on heart. The one that does so much not just on the track, but off it as well. It may be the friendly face that welcomes newcomers, or the one that helps those struggling in need or has questions. The Driver of the Year is the one that makes a positive impact on the league. The driver that has been chosen for this award is someone who is so kind off the track you would never guess how fierce of a competitor he is on it. He'll race you clean, then share hilarious jokes and memes in our Discord post-race. He has been nothing but a positive contribution to our league since day one. Our 2021 Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year is Mike Rasmus.
Well, that's crazy, Mark. Thank you so much. I mean, that means a lot. That's insane. I'm so proud to get that award. Can't thank you guys enough for welcoming me here. I mean, this is my first full season, and everyone's just become such a good friend. And you know, every day I try to pay that back.
Well, he took victory to close out 2021, and he is your 2021 Driver of the Year, Mike Rasmus. Now we go to the Rookie of the Year, and ready to hand that award out is Chris Fowler.
Yes, sir. So our Rookie of the Year, presented by Butt Kicker. You're going to get some good stuff from HyperX, some minus 273 gloves and stuff. Man, you had a great season. You had 3 wins on the season. Just short of the championship, but you did win Rookie of the Year, so congratulations, Matt Taylor.
Thanks, Chris. I do really appreciate it, guys. We'll give it another shot next year for sure.
And in what was a dominant year for Avatar Order Racing, since we've already spoken To both Aaron Morgan, to Matt Taylor as well. Let's welcome to the RaceSpotTV broadcast booth the third member of Avatar Order Racing, Michael O'Brien, who is ready to accept the team championship.
Yeah, so our team championship presented by HyperX. I mean, these guys were dominant all season long. They were the epitome of teamwork all season. They were in the front all season. And congratulations to Avatar Auto Racing on the team championship.
Thanks so much. We've had a great season. Obviously, Matt and Aaron have been the stars of the show, but we've worked well together. We've put our practice in and raced well, so it's been pretty great. On a personal note, it's been a pleasure to learn from them, and I definitely wouldn't have been as competitive if I wasn't on the team.
Well, a dominant performance from Avatar Order Racing across of our 18 races, had the team championship locked up before we even came to the Action City. And next up to present the Cleanest Driver Award is Tyler Graff.
Hey guys, the Cleanest Driver Award, sponsored by Graphics Esports. Lowest incident average throughout the entire season. Like Mark touched on, for the Driver of the Year, I mean, you got to be clean to get this award. Mike Rasmus is the cleanest driver of the season. He'll get a butt kicker, SimVibe, and a SimVibe software from SimExperience.
Well, how about that? I'm back. That's amazing. maybe I'll be less nice next season, and see. Never mind. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be myself.
Great season for Mike Rasmus, and also here to present the Turning Point Award is Tyler Graff, but unfortunately the winner is not here standing by to accept it.
Yeah, so the Turning Point Award goes to David Syrah. He gained 11 positions in the points from mid-season to the end of the season, which is an awesome turnaround in any competition. So congrats to David. I wish he was here to accept it, but David's an awesome dude, and I know he'll be thrilled to find this out.
Seems like a theme of this postseason award show is speaking to Mike Rasmus, and we'll bring him back in for one final time to accept the Iron Man Award, which Chris Fowler is here to hand out.
Yeah, so our Iron Man Award is presented by Carnox. The Iron Man Award is the driver who completes the most miles in a season without drops. And you don't get this award without being the cleanest driver as well. So congratulations, Mike Rasmus, on the Iron Man Award.
All right, how about that? Yeah, I mean, I guess being polite on track pays off sometimes, doesn't it?
There.
Well, racking up the awards was Mike Rasmus, in addition to his trip to HyperX Victory Lane here to close out the 2021 Lionheart Retro Series. And before we wrap up our post-season award show, let's hand it on over to the man that makes all of this possible. George Anzaldo is standing by. And George, great to have you out on track as well here today. A bit of an incident coming to the checkered flag for you, but such a fun season, and what a dramatic way to close off 2021 across of Lionheart competition.
Oh, I absolutely love it. I'm thrilled. I couldn't ask for a better ending to the season, and the season is, in its entirety, has been just great. I really appreciate all the hard work by the drivers. It's been phenomenal. So I'd like to thank, first off, our viewers for tuning in this season. Just want to let you know that we've really appreciated your support, and we can't wait for 2022. And we have so many great things in store for you. So definitely would like to see you back here in March. On behalf of the entire administration team and our drivers, we'd like to thank HyperX for their continued support of our organization, as well as outfitting our drivers with their amazing headsets. Thanks again to SimExperience for their support as a title sponsor for our Retro Series and providing our grand prize to our season champion with that direct drive wheel. It's fantastic. And then finally, we'd like to thank Minus 273, Carnox, Graphics Esports, and all of our 2021 sponsors for their support and contributions to the Lionheart Racing Series. So with that, again, we'd like to say thank you as well to RaceSpot. You guys did a fantastic job. We're so happy to be here. We're happy to make RaceSpot our home, and we're looking forward to 2022, as well as ESTV. You'll see us there again on the network. So again, thank you so much, and we're signing off. We'll do it again next year. Let's do it.
And we're already well into December. The turn of the new year is not far away, and well, March is going to be busy, and it kicks off the road all over again for Lionheart Racing Series competition. And a reminder that you can learn more about Lionheart and its various partners by heading on over to lionheartracingseries.com if you fancy yourself as maybe a driver, want to get involved with some of the great stuff that you've seen, not just tonight, but across of 2021. And make sure that you send in an application as soon as possible, because the rosters will be closing very, very soon. Well, Andrew, it's time to wrap up, and I'm still a little bit in shock as to how things closed off here. I can only imagine that both Aaron Morgan and Matt Taylor are equally shocked.
Absolutely. For one, it is absolute elation on the part of Aaron Morgan, getting the championship by that close a margin, and then on the other side, Matt Taylor with the agony of defeat, coming that close and doing everything he possibly could, but in the end coming up short on a count back, no less. It's heartbreaking for Matt Taylor, but it is the story of the season for Aaron Morgan. He did a great job here today. He did exactly the front, stayed focused, and really did a great job, and he's a worthy champion here for the Lionheart Retro Series in 2021.
And what a year it's been across of Lionheart competition, Andrew. I mean, 3 series. We saw the debut of Speedway with the DW12, harking back to, season 1 of the Lionheart IndyCar series. Some great oval competition. We saw our first female champion across of Lionheart competition. The IndyCar series, we saw Adam Blocker become a 4-time Lionheart IndyCar Series champion in what was an extraordinary campaign, averaging basically a podium a race. Hasn't finished outside of the top 5 since September of 2020. And then this, the closest championship finish in Lionheart history. It really has been a history-making season for Lionheart competition.
It has been an absolutely amazing season to watch and to be a part of, as I got to have the pleasure of driving in that IR18 series. And then I also got to echo what we said, with what George said about the fans, especially out on the YouTube chat. Sophia and Andrew Jenkins and so many others. There are so many teammates and friends and family that watch these broadcasts. And I know that it's not just me, but all of the drivers can feel that support when they have that in the from their friends and family. And watching back these races and being able to see that those people in the channel talking and having a good time and watching you race, that's also very special. So just wanted to thank everyone who watched this season on YouTube and on ESTV. The support has been felt by all of the drivers. So just a huge shout out to everyone who supports this series.
And with that said, it is time to say goodbye for Lionheart competition for RaceSpotTV for 2021. It's been incredible. It's been one of the craziest rides that we've been on here at RaceSpotTV so far this year. Having said that, there's only 2 weeks left to go. So with that said, it is time to wrap things up, to say goodbye. What a year it's been, the first year of Lionheart on RaceSpotTV, and we cannot wait to do it all over again in 2022. March cannot come soon enough when we get underway with all 3 Lionheart sanctioned competitions. Don't forget, you can stay up to date with all things Lionheart across of social media. Follow them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to keep up to date with the latest comings and goings in the virtual paddock. ESTV has your esports needs covered. Follow them on social media and tune in for Lionheart broadcasts and so much more, while RaceSpotTV has your sim racing action in its hands. Subscribe to us on YouTube, hit that red button, hit the bell next to it as well to get notified every single time we go live with a great sim racing series that we get to cover. On behalf of everyone at RaceSpot, we'd like to thank you wherever you are around the world, however you watch, for tuning in across of the roller coaster ride that has been Lionheart in 2021. For Hugo Luis, for Tyler Maxson, some of our production staff behind the scenes, for ATVO doing our graphics work, for Dougie Beard, Istvan Ballo producing cameras throughout the entirety of 2021, for our entire commentary team, for Lorenzo Bonder, for Justin Prince, for Dylan Cole, for Jonathan Burke, for Andrew Kinsella, my name is Arjuna Kankipati. We will see you in 2022. What a ride Lionheart has been on in 2021, but for now, so long and goodbye.